Come, let me tell you a story. Because if you have listened to enough stories, and I sincerely hope you have, otherwise, I've been talking to myself for quite some time now, you eventually begin noticing a curious pattern, namely that evil almost always mistakes patience for weakness, kindness for helplessness, and silence for surrender. And poor Hayagriva, who had spent so long hiding at the bottom of the cosmic ocean, congratulating himself on having outsmarted the Creator, the Preserver, and the quiet possibility of destiny itself, had now made the rather unfortunate decision of looking directly at Lord Vishnu and saying, in effect, I think I can take him. Which, if mythology has taught us anything at all, is generally the last truly confident thought a villain had ever had. Far above, the great ark floated safely behind the Lord Matsya. The sages continued chanting, the animals huddled together, even the wind seemed unwilling to interrupt what was about to happen, because far below, where sunlight had never reached and silence had ruled since before the mountains first rose from the earth, Hayagriva lifted his mighty mace. You're too late, he roared. The Vedas belong to me now. Now I have heard people say many foolish things throughout my life. I'll only have one sweet. I'll start exercising tomorrow. I'll definitely don't need directions. Those are all admirable examples. But standing in front of Lord Vishnu while holding stolen Vedas and announcing, these belong to me now, must surely rank somewhere near the very top of that list. Lord Matsya did not answer immediately. He simply looked at Hayagriva. There's something profoundly unsettling about being looked at by someone who has absolutely nothing to prove. No anger, no panic, no excitement, only complete certainty. Finally, Vishnu spoke. They never did. That was all. Just 4 words. No speeches, no dramatic declarations, simply the truth. Because knowledge has never belonged to those who steal it. Knowledge belongs to those who preserve it. Hayagriva snarled. Enough! With a roar that shook the ocean floor, he hurled himself towards Matsya, his mace slicing through the ancient waters with such tremendous force that entire currents twisted around him like frightened serpents, and for one breathtaking moment it seemed as though the sea itself had become a battlefield. Every wave rising, every creature fleeing, every hidden cavern echoing with the sound of a demon who still believed that victory was possible. The maze came crashing down. Matsya moved. Not hurriedly, not dramatically, simply moved. The enormous weapon struck nothing but water. Now, that may sound disappointing. Let me assure you, when your opponent is large enough to mistake a mountain for a pebble and he still misses, disappointment is not the emotion he experiences first. Embarrassment usually arrives slightly ahead of panic. Hayagriva spun around. Gone. Where had Vishnu? A tremendous crash echoed beside him. The mighty tail of Matsya struck the ocean with such force that the water rose like towering walls, sending the demon tumbling through the abyss as though he weighed no more than a dry leaf caught in a monsoon wind. I imagine that was the precise moment Hayagriva's confidence quietly packed its belongings and left. Still, pride is a remarkably stubborn traveling companion. The demon rose again. You cannot defeat me. Now, forgive me, but I've always found that sentence rather fascinating. Nobody ever shouts, you can definitely defeat me. Villains always make confident announcements at exactly the point in the story where confidence had become a very expensive luxury. Hayagriva summoned every ounce of his strength. The oceans darkened, whirlpools spun into existence, columns of water rose towards the heavens, and the very depth trembled beneath the force of his rage. The sages aboard the ark felt the waters begin to churn violently. One young disciple clutched the edge of the boat. Master, he whispered. Is Lord Vishnu? The old sage smiled before the boy had ever finished speaking. Afraid? The old man chuckled. My child, he said, the ocean is afraid. I rather liked that answer. And then, everything became still. Not gradually, instantly. The whirlpools vanished. The currents stopped. Water itself seemed to hold its breath. Matsya's eyes shone brighter than the sun itself. The Sudarshana Chakra appeared. Now there are weapons, and then there are symbols. The Sudarshan Chakra is both. It does not merely destroy, it restores order. It reminds chaos that it has wandered rather too far from home. The divine discus spun once, twice, and then vanished. Hayagriva barely had time to realize what had happened. A flash of brilliant light cut through the darkness, and Hayagriva had barely time to think, oh, and silence followed. When the waters finally settled, the demon was no more. The Vedas drifted gently through the oceans, untouched by battle, glowing with the same eternal brilliance they had possessed since the dawn of creation itself. It's rather fitting, isn't it? Truth has an extraordinary habit of surviving the people who try to bury it. Lord Matsya approached them with infinite care, not the care of a warrior claiming a prize, the care of a teacher picking up books that had fallen to the floor. He gathered the sacred Vedas, and for a moment the entire ocean was illuminated. Far above, aboard the ark, the sages stopped chanting. They smiled. They knew, without seeing. Some victories announced themselves long before anyone describes them. And then Lord Matsya rose, up through the endless waters, past ancient currents, past forgotten depths, past the places where even light grows tired, until at last his glorious form emerged beside the ark once more, carrying in his divine presence the knowledge that had been stolen from the universe. Manu folded his hands. My lord, the Vedas, they're home. Vishnu smiled. They always were. The rain had stopped. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a single ray of sunlight broke through the clouds. It touched the endless ocean, then another and another. The waters, which had spent so many days roaring with unimaginable fury, now shimmered peacefully beneath the golden light as though the universe itself had finally exhaled. The age of destruction had fulfilled its purpose. The age of renewal had quietly begun. Now, if there were merely a story about a fish, I would end here. But it isn't. It's the story of the very first promise Vishnu has ever made to creation. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir-bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyam paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. That whenever darkness grows too bold, whenever knowledge is threatened, whenever righteousness seemed hopelessly outnumbered, he will come. Perhaps not in the form anyone expects, perhaps not in the way anyone imagines, but he will come. And that, my dear listener, is why the first avatar of Vishnu is not remembered because he defeated a demon. He is remembered because he made a promise. A promise he has kept. Again, and again, and again. The sages looked towards the brightening horizon. Manu watched the waters slowly begin their retreat, and the animals stirred. The birds sang once more, and life, patient as ever, in all its glory, was preparing to begin again. The old banyan, if it had stood there in those days, would have smiled too. Because every ending worthy of being remembered carries within it the seeds of another story. And somewhere in the depths of the newly calmed cosmic ocean, another challenge, another mountain, another impossible task was already waiting. But that is a tale for another evening. Because next time you come to sit beneath the old banyan, we shall discover why, of all creatures in the world, the fate of the universe once depended on a tortoise.